You're listening to episode 778 of a VerySpatial podcast, February 15th, 2026. Hello and welcome to our VerySpatial podcast. I'm Jesse.
I'm Sue.
This is Barb.
And I'm Frank.
And this week we're going to be talking about something. We'll see what it is. But first, in the news, China has rolled out satellite short messages. This is a thing, of course, in the United States. We've seen various providers working on with Starlink to do this, but this is China rolling it out through the BeiDou satellites. And so this is something, taking advantage of capabilities they have built into their satellites to be able to do these short messages through the location-based services, the PNT capabilities of BeiDou. So kind of interesting to see that. And of course, we're still working on GPS 3, which is not hugely dissimilar from GPS 1. And so whenever we look at Galileo, whenever we look at BeiDou, which were built, in this, last decade, they're building in more capabilities than we currently are with our systems. So it's curious to see these being implemented. And it's being implemented, has been implemented by all three of the main Chinese telecom operators, China Mobile, China Telecom, and China Unicom. So that's a pretty broad range of people who have this as an option if they're in a place that doesn't have a cell signal.
Yeah, and this is very needed because it is if you're a hiker and you get lost, or if you're in inhospitable or remote terrain, or if you're out at sea on things like an oil rig, then, the ability to get messages when ground messaging isn't working is very critical. And it's something that, we've been working towards, like you said, Jesse, many people have been working on ways to address this problem. And so it's good to see things that are actually can work for the regions of the world that, everyone has their own specific topography and issues that require remote assistance.
It has recently racked up a lot of awards at the MAPS conference. So that's going on just before or during the Geo Week, which is going on while we're recording this. And so in addition to racking up various awards, they also recently released their GeoAgent, which of course multiple companies are pushing into this agentic space. We're kind of curious. We haven't had a chance to play with it. I don't think anybody has. Anybody?
No.
Nope.
No, we're not. None of us are MB5 users, which is a little bit too bad because I think they're currently the ones who own Envy, right? Now I'm curious.
That is a good question.
Yes, they acquired Envy last year, I believe, from whoever it was at that point in time, who I don't remember. We're at the point now that I can't remember who bought who. I used to be the guy who could tell you who bought who when, and now I'm just like, it's just too much. I'm just like, whatever.
Well, what makes that, as a side editorial comment, make that even more complicated is that things are picked up as part of a portfolio, right? And you'll forget A bought B, and then B sold to X, then X combine that to sell it to W, and you're like, wait a minute, okay, who owns this thing now? It's really hard.
And you're like, did they buy it for Envy? Did they buy it for IDL? It doesn't matter. They bought both of them, and it's just like, I don't know. And you got these products that you're like, okay, is this still even a product? And they just like buy it and then go, we bought it for this piece, but we got this other piece, and we don't really want to keep it going, so we're just going to quietly shelve it. You have no idea. Yeah. So, but if you're into that space, they're working in it, so it's something to be aware of, something to be of interest to some people. But I think we're still at that point where, letting the AI make these kind of inferences and such for geospatial intelligence and, mission critical type of things are still a little iffy on my end, at least. But, it does give you a use case where you can, jump ahead of where you might be if you're relying on some of the more traditional deep learning methods. So who knows?
I think this news item could spawn its own topic, maybe not today, but to where this is going and how do we feel about it in the industry? How do we personally feel about it within the industry?
It was I'll point out there was a recent blog post over on, well, it was somebody posting somebody else's response to the Geo 2050 GeoAI conference presentations. And so I'm not going to follow that whole train of who linked to who, but basically the upshot was, are we looking at the wreckage before it happens, as we keep saying AI needs to be the future of geo and geospatial intelligence and geospatial technologies and geospatial data, or, is it actually going to happen? And so it's kind of all over the place. It's going to happen in some way. It's just whether or not it's going to be useful,
or where is it going to be useful, as opposed to the way it's currently presented as everywhere. Well, is it? I mean, there's parts that it can do pretty well, but other parts you're like, well, it's a little hinky.
Yeah.
Common Space, pending nonprofit out of Denver, Colorado, has released a report on the need for building an open license, freely accessible, high-resolution satellite constellation that is dedicated to humanitarian aid and open data. This would be one satellite constellation that is independent of any government or any sort of commercial appeal. The idea is that there needs to be one that it's dedicated to the work done by nonprofits and humanitarian aid groups.
A lot of their materials on their site point to the fact that, there are a lot of satellites already out there. It's just what we have access to, especially high resolution, what we have access to, a lot of it's behind paywalls. And so how do we adjust for that, or how can we get around that for more open use cases?
Something I find rather compelling about this is the notion that, and this gets back to some of the GIS and society debates, right? But the notion that the expense of launching a satellite, when we were growing up, the expense of launching a satellite that's only governments do that. The only people who can possibly have enough money to do that was sort of the baseline. There were some exceptions, you had communication satellites, but, essentially really expensive endeavor that we've now brought this technology down to the point where an agency or group or a nonprofit can go, well, hey, we can actually put something out there, which is kind of exciting in its own right.
Well, I think too, right? The debate that's evolved isn't just about who could afford to put it up, and you're absolutely right, the cost, but that the whole evolution that we've covered in the years of the podcast, right, of the change in access to the results of these things, right? The data itself, the imagery, has shown that people are now aware of what you can do with it. And the fact that it's beholden to those who are willing to release it and what they release it for, right, is always been an issue. But the expectation, and this comes down to that whole question, right? Is it just something that's a product? Is it infrastructure? Is it, what is it and who is it for the good of, kind of thing? And I think this is a really interesting project idea if they can get it off the ground. But I do think there was a time when we thought that we would have access to, data from satellites for environmental monitoring. Maybe not the high resolution yet, but a lot more things are uncertain now, just into what we can actually get from traditional sources.
And they do have a government governance task force that anyone in the industry that's interested can apply for, along with a community demand report for anyone that's interested. HarperNonFiction has picked up a book from Catherine Dunn on how the GPS satellite system development of it has actually shaped the world. I thought this was interesting because it wasn't out of something like ESRI Press. This is from big publishing house, and it signifies if you've got any stories you want to tell about the geospatial industry, the door might be open for interest.
The last sentence is intriguing. It's also a book for people who just love mysteries. What is the mystery? Now I want to know.
Where are you at? That's the mystery.
Yeah. Well, that is it. Yeah. I mean, curious. They turned Longitude into a pretty cool book. So.
And that's it for the news.
A brand new dance to an old familiar tune. Watery eyes and heartfelt constellations.
In today's Web Corner, National Geographic MapMaker, someone has created a way to use a game controller to navigate its 3D mapping environment. And I totally picked up this video for Sue. It's from Tom Baker, who does GIS education.
Over at Esri.
Yeah, Tom Baker over at Esri has come up with this way to use a Bluetooth game controller. And you can fly through the 3D spaces of MapMaker for about $35 US. And, you know, the MapMaker, National Geographic MapMaker that they did in collaboration with the ESRI has more stuff coming out. Before, it didn't seem like they had a lot coming out for educators to use. And now they're coming out with a lot of instruction, lesson plans, and in this case, just cool things to do.
And if you already have a controller, it's basically free.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you already got the controller, to see which ones it's. Oh wait, it's saying which one's compatible with.
But I think it's basically Xbox controllers. But I mean, really, as long as it can map your keys, any controller should work.
And there are tons of PS controllers to Bluetooth thingamabobbies out there too. So if you have a PS controller, then you can also do it with a little bit of finagling and maybe a driver download.
A brand new dance to an old familiar tune. Watery eyes and heartfelt constellations don't mean all.
So you guys are getting ready for the AAG conference, and I know that I'm getting ready for the AAG node, but someone who is in our career office is making a, you know, what you do to prepare for a conference. I know we seem to do that every year right before the AAG, you know, how
Or
you,
the UC.
yeah, or, you know, how you make the most out of your conference experience. But now conferences are changing. So conferences have changed a lot in the past few years since the pandemic, but we've, you know, having the virtual presence, but now a lot of conferences are doing hybrid. They're, you know, in person, online, and then like I'm doing the node is a new format. I've also heard other people say conferences are doing their virtual section a few weeks after their in-person section. So I think it's worth revisiting, you know, how you prepare for and do your conferencing of all types.
Actually, my first question on this actually for you, Barb, is can you explain a little bit more what being a node for the AAG conference means as an example
Okay.
of kind of how things have changed?
This is the first time I'm doing it, so I am learning as I go, but the node, which is still open for people to sign up for, is a watch party. So we would be able to show AAG sessions that are offered virtual, hybrid, or streaming so that anyone who is in our region could come and attend, and they could participate, actually physically participate, you know, virtually participate in the AAG conference as if they were there. That's joining in on discussions, watching the speakers. We can't give presentations, but at the same time, we can do our own sort of activities that we want to do in our region. So what we're doing is starting very small, and, you know, just to try it out and see what we're doing. Last year, there were about, I think, 5 universities and that did it. I don't think it has to technically just be a university. It just has to be regional that can do a node, and they offer you a lot of support, including technical support, which, as we know from even being in person at any conference, is important to have that technical support there if things go wrong. And I've just like you do when you go to the in-person conference or do virtual, I am going through the agenda going, what looks good and what fits my timeline, and how do I account for, you know, that time change going, okay, this is going to happen at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. So I'll have more to report, you know, after the AAG, but this is just one way it's being done within the geospatial community.
Yes, we should note that this is the first year we're doing it, but it's not the first year that we were accepted to do it. So this I don't know what the word I'm looking for here. This approach, I don't have a better word, is something that AAG came up with last year. In the political turmoil that was going on over the last year, we chose not to continue to do it because of things going on in our state at the same time. But this is the second year they've done it, and I think all the participants have been like small regional schools or, you know, localities that would not normally be able to go to an event like AAG. So AAG is in San Francisco this year, and I don't know what it costs. I can look at what it costs to attend. It's even if you're a student, it's still a lot of money. And that's before you ever fly out there or get a hotel or figure out how to eat or all those other things like that. So this is kind of an attempt to say, well, we can do something for particularly these small regional institutions who typically have disadvantaged student bodies, to give them some ability to participate in something like AAG without, if something like the full experience is just beyond their means.
I mean, it was almost double the last time we went, which was probably 7 or 8 years ago. But yeah, it was, yeah.
Like I said, that's just registration.
Yeah. The hotel,
cheap
I
part.
think, is 200 and something, 270 or something like that per night for the conference hotel. That doesn't get into the plane tickets or how much it costs to eat in San Francisco or do transportation. So, yeah.
And, this is a relatively, I want to say it's relatively novel. I wouldn't say it's unique. There may be others out there that do it, and I just unaware. But I think it's a very compelling way to think about conferences in the 21st century, given the technology that we have available to us, to say, well, wait a minute, why can't we have these institutions that have access to conference-like ability? Why don't we loop them in as much as we're able to give some sort of experience here? It's a different way of thinking than, the regional AAGs, which, they're useful and important in their own right, but this gets you into the big one in a very real sense.
Yeah, and I think that that was part of the reason why I asked the question, because I think that it's maybe a way to try to think about what has been for me. Now, this is my take on it. One of the things has been the weakness of the virtual conference end of it, just as a presenter, is that one of the great things that we would always in our episodes about, conference travel and all of that, one of the things we would highlight, right, is that chance to interact with your fellow GIS people or fellow geographers or, whatever the conferences that you're at is. And because of both technology and I think logistics in general, it is difficult to get that same kind of thing in a virtual environment, right? It's just that's just the way it is. All right. And so trying to figure out some melding of the things for people who can't go but would like to participate in the events of a conference, I think is something that's still a work in progress. And so, I think this is really interesting as a take on a way to have at a node, right, some chance to have that interaction that's spontaneous, that just, even with attempts to do it in the virtual conference environment, it's just really awkward and hard still. At least that's my take on it on the ones that I've done.
The other thing I think is nice about the watch party idea, which again, other conferences do similar, is that, Sue, like you said, it's not you're one individual and you're isolated. It's an event, and it's a geographic event that's still attached to the main event. And it's also, I think, a lot of times like a launch pad. If you're someone that might not have ever gone to a conference, it gives you that feeling. So you might gain the confidence before you go somewhere else to go to one. So almost like a live practice for an actual conference. I think many of us forget that nervousness you get before you go to your first conference experience. And I know it's not just, something that we experience within the geography and geospatial realm that you hear a lot of times. I know people in law school getting nervous before their first law school conference and asking a lot of questions. And this gives you sort of a conference prep.
So we have in-person conferences, we have nodes, we have online conferences. I think, there's still a lot to be said about being able to go and be at a conference in person, being able to have that conversation, to sit back and talk about not conference things, but things that are relevant to your field, make those relationships. I think whenever we talk to students a lot of times, as they're either thinking about the job market or thinking about going into academia for a master's or something, the ability for them to meet people that they'll be applying to those companies or they'll be applying to those grad schools, and especially for grad school, where my recommendation is always ignore the grad school, look for the people. And so having that chance to go to a conference, hear what the person you think you might want to work with is talking about. And, it's one thing to be able to read their papers, but being able to actually hear them and then talk to them, or even talk to some of their grad students who are there and get a sense of not just that specific event, but what life could be like for you in the future. So, yeah, I mean, there's still a lot there to argue for going to a conference, but the costs just keep skyrocketing.
And not for nothing, we're geographers, right? As a geography conference, just experiencing a new geography's got value, I think. Just seeing what the world looks like somewhere else, that's pretty, can be pretty powerful in its own right. So, that's not unique to just geography. Any conference can get that. But I think that we, more than any other conference, should recognize, that's useful too, if you can afford the scratch.
On the organizing side too, though, I think a lot of people, unless they've done it, don't realize what all goes into. And those in the planning, those who have planning responsibilities in organizations like AAG and stuff could do a lot better than me in answering this. But when you think about it, right, when you're attracting thousands of attendees potentially, there really are a limited number of places where you can host these kinds of events and do it because you have to have so it is a geography problem, right? You have to have the transportation nodes. You have to have facilities that can hold the people to stay in or nearby facilities. You have to have meeting facilities. And in the case of AAG, if you ever sit back and think about all of the concurrent sessions going on at the same time and all the rooms that you have to have access to, and you start thinking about how much that's got to cost over 5 days, whatever the timing is, it really does limit it. And I know people ask this all the time, and I think AG often will have here's how we come up with things. And then on top of that, you pick a place and you cannot predict what the other types of situations will be, maybe in your location, because you've had to plan it out, 2, 3, however many years in advance. And so, the costs are reflective, I think, of a lot of what's going on, and tried lots of different ways to help support scholars and students who want to come to conferences. But it is hard. It's really hard.
My favorite counter to that or add on to that is that last time it was in San Francisco, the AAG conference, it was during Poopgate.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
People, for whatever reason, the homeless population were making a statement by, defecating on the sidewalks. And so it was a curious thing. And there was an email just last week from the AAG saying, we're aware that people have questions about some of the locations. We have recently done conferences and we're going to form a committee, or the committee on conferences will be taking conversations and points around that. So, they are aware. I think a lot of it, it's a multi-decade organization. And so these conferences have been going on fairly regularly. And if you look at the map and the timeline, it's generally at a cycle. So once every number of years, it goes to New York City. Every number of years, it goes to San Francisco. Every number of years, it goes to
Chicago.
LA, yeah. And so some of them, like last year's in Detroit, was a little bit off of the schedule. But, there are those 5 or 6 cities that are on that regular return route because they have the relationship with those hotels and such that they just keep coming back to. Now, we also have to keep in mind that the organization has grown from, I think, around 3,000 whenever I first joined back in 2000 or a little bit before 2000 to, 8,000 people are attending now. So, it does begin to, like Sue was saying, put a strain on physical limitations. And even in San Francisco, we're working at, it's 2 different hotels that are being used. So you have to walk a couple of blocks up and down a hill just to get to all the sessions.
So we Barbara and I joined AAG a little bit later than you guys. So I'm just curious. I've never been to an AAG that wasn't at 2 physical locations in the city. Even in places like Las Vegas, which, its conference center is one of, if not the biggest in the country. It's still, that was the overflow space, was the conference center. It was the hotel was full, and then other stuff was over here. Mm-hmm. Have you guys has it ever been localized to one physical building in any of the ones that you've gone to?
I don't think so. Like New Orleans had a couple. Yeah. So
yeah. Everyone I've ever been, Chicago, New York City, Las Vegas, all the big cities, DC, still it's spilled. And that's how big it is. It just blows my mind that even these really big metropolitan areas that can handle it, they actually can't handle it. They have to go to 2 buildings.
But I have to say they really handle it well between those 2 buildings.
Yeah, they do a great job.
I've never had it feel as if it wasn't one cohesive conference, even though you're going between places. But I did feel like we're really using up not using up, but we're really spread out and taking a large chunk of that geography, for what we're doing, just geographers everywhere.
Then there's accessibility questions, right? Because being able to get from one session to the next, and if you're in different buildings, and those buildings are in different elevations on a street.
Like Seattle, where you had to go up the hill to get to this, what I thought of as the second building.
Yeah. Seattle,
That's,
San
and
Francisco,
there was a definite, I don't have accessibility issues. I'm just lazy, but there were definitely issues are like, I'd like to go to the session, but I'm not going to because I got to walk all the way back up the hill. I'll go to this other session. That's just something that naturally happens.
Yeah. But you should still take advantage of conferences whenever you can. So sorry to go a little negative there, but I mean, they work really hard to try to make these things a viable option for everybody who is attending them. There are just certain things. I mean, whenever you're talking about over 50 sessions concurrently, it's a big area. You got to have all the rooms for each of those concurrent sessions. And it becomes crazy.
In the spirit of what we're trying to do in the theoretic topic here, of course, we've gone a little different places, but one of the things that I would tell people about AAG, which was I experienced this with the Esri UC too, but in a completely different way. You kind of have to learn the culture of how presentations work, not in terms of you giving them, but what type of stuff is going to be talked at where and how to kind of sort through it. Because it's not always obvious. So, for example, at the UC, broadly speaking, overgeneralizing a lot, I know, but you've got the people who use GIS that come from cities and localities and communities and stuff like that. They're implementing GIS. They're giving presentations. And then you've got Esri, who's giving either trainings on how to do something or introducing a new product or explaining whatever it may be. They're both valuable, but they're very different types of presentations. And you have to learn, okay, wait a minute. If I'm going to this, I'm going to learn this type of thing. If I'm going over here, it's going to be a different thing. And that took me a couple UCs to sort out, I understand how this works and what types of things I'm going to experience. Well, luckily for me, that was all done on my employer's dime. So I was able to go back and learn that through subsequent, interactions. AAG was always a little more challenging because one of the things that took me a while to figure out is, here's the topic. Okay, that seems interesting. I'll go to that presentation. Oh, this is a first-year master's student that's giving this presentation. There's nothing wrong with that, and they need to be doing that, and it's important. But that's going to be a fundamentally different type of presentation than somebody who's been doing this. It's one of the greats in the field. So you end up paying attention to names a whole lot more than you may at something like UC or other type of conferences. And saying, well, I'm going to go to the big names because I'm going to learn what's the innovative new thing that I can be involved in. And it's just a cultural thing that you have to get used to. And I think that that's one of the real challenges for new people coming to conferences. We don't do a good job of kind of introducing this a bit.
I think I think that the formats that you'll encounter at a conference and again, whether you're going in person or virtual, are a bit different. And one of the things that I think is always, for me, people, when they go to their first panel session at an academic conference, they're always surprised by that one. And it does vary in discipline or at the event, but just what it is you're going to see, right? And how that translates potentially to a virtual situation if you have that option, right? So you have paper presentations. So this is your work. It would vary from the conference, whether you get 15 minutes, right? So they're blocked into a session. But panels, those are usually the participants are perhaps, leaders in a particular field, or they have a particular specialty that they want to talk about issues. And so that one panel session very much does depend on audience participation, right? To ask questions, to hear the responses. A lot of times the panel presenters can, bounce things off of each other in a lull, but those are sessions that are really dynamic in the moment, right? In the session. And I have to say myself, I have done virtual conferences, but I've not gone to any panels at a virtual conference. So that's one that I've only experienced in person. But I think it's an interesting thing, right? When you're trying to say, what is the conference, session gonna be like, and what am I gonna experience?
I think most importantly, don't expect that you're going to be able to go to all your sessions that you want to go to, because they will inevitably overlap. If you're there for I don't know, GIS and urban planning, then there will be 3 or 4 sessions, not just 3 or 4 papers, but 3 or 4 sessions that are looking at that are all at the same time. And again, they try to spread things out as much as they can, but whenever you're talking about 50 concurrent sessions going for 5 days, what's that, 250 times 4 different session periods, so 1,000 different sessions, you can't keep everything from overlapping. And so just be aware that, look for all of them and then figure out, one, based on where you are, which one's the best to go to, and 2, to counter Frank a little bit, maybe don't go to the big name. Go to see the person who tried to implement what the big name was talking about. So go to that first year grad student and see what they're making with the things that people are saying theoretically, because again, theory is great and I love talking about it, but at the same time, sometimes whenever you get the theory into the field, it didn't pan out the way we thought it would. So having someone actually try to apply those things is also just as interesting, I think, as the big name who's going to give you something new to follow in the future.
And along with that, I would also say, socialize. Don't see, socializing with other geographers as taking away from your attendance. It's part of it. It's the reason you go. So, really enjoy that time to be able to immerse yourself and talk with other people that have, similar interests or thoughts so that you connect and then meet up after the conference and then continue to meet them. We do that ritual of meeting at the conference, catching up with other people that are in your own discipline.
It's the Pareto conversation, right? Spend 20 minutes in sessions, 80% wandering around and talking to people.
Yeah. Also, believe it or not, and I say that I'm not saying anyone here, then we all know this, but believe it or not, I don't care how big the name is. After the session is over, if you're in no hurry to get to another session, you can just walk up and talk to them.
Yeah.
Like most of people will be happy to talk to you. I mean, it could be the biggest name in the industry and they'll be like, yeah, sure, let's talk. There's no law against it. And it's usually encouraged. And it's a great way to, particularly if you're thinking to yourself, I have this question, but I think it's a stupid question. I don't want to look like an idiot in front of everybody. Just go ask afterwards. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, it's a really good question. I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of basic. You need to learn this. They're not going to judge you. I mean, in their head, who knows what they're thinking, but people don't act like they're going to judge you at all. They'll be happy to engage with you.
At an academic conference, keep that in mind, because if you want to try to catch Jack Dangerman to have a quick talk with him, good luck.
But I will say, you're absolutely right. But I will say, you'd be surprised the people you can have a quick conversation with at what level they're at. Yeah. You can talk to VPs and executives, even at the Ezra UC. Yeah. If you catch the right person at the right time. But usually if they have to go somewhere, they go. So you don't really get that.
I mean, they have their days planned for them. They are not able to just choose to stay and talk.
And I also have to say, because this was something that I started getting invited to do, which was, people I had gone to school with texting me and saying, hey, students of mine are presenting this poster or giving this talk. If you have time, could you just stop by, just in case there's no one that stopped by and asked a question, not just a way to be encouraging. And so if you recognize a school you went to or a name or anything, just drop by and make their day by showing an interest, because that's what everyone wants to know. Somebody's interested in what I'm doing and what I'm interested in and spent time on.
Then don't do what Jesse does, which is just walk up and say, okay, tell me what you're doing.
But you might make someone say, remember when we all traipsed into, this is a WVU reminiscing, when we all traipsed into Dr. Warner's presentation, who, by the way, Dr. Tim Warner, very well-known remote sensing scientist, but his work is very specific. And so he's like, why would you go to my session?
And I will point out, he's one of the nicest human beings on the face of the planet. He's just a very, very nice man.
That's our topic. Go to conferences, virtual, nodes, in person. Enjoy your time
hybrid
there.
Streaming.
Yeah, all of them. And enjoy that.
A brand new dance to an old familiar tune. Watery eyes and heartfelt constellations don't mean all.
As the events corner is empty, ironically, we will continue on and say, if you would like us to add your event to the podcast, send us an email to podcast@veryspatial.com.
If you'd like to reach us individually, I can be reached at sue@veryspatial.com.
I can be reached at barb@veryspatial.com.
You can reach me at frank@veryspatial.com.
And I'm available at Kinda Spatial. And of course, you can find all of our contact information over at veryspatial.com/contacts.
As always,
We're the folks from Very Spatial.
Thanks for listening.
We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Early warning, all too soon. A brand new dance to an old familiar tune. Watery eyes and heartfelt constellations don't mean all that much today. Time remembered the days of old. Dried up flowers pressed inside the fold. A faded memory from a journal entry. Never meant this much before. And I'm always lost for words to say we'll see each other again someday. But it's hard to watch these years roll by without age us both this